Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 29 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. Today, I am chatting with author Denise Grover-Swank. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I am been a fan and reader of yours for a while and excited to be chatting with you. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been writing, and how you got started.
Okay, well, I've always written a little bit my whole life. I say that I started my first book in fourth grade and then started the habit of not finishing a book that I started. But I finally, back in 2009, I heard about NaNoWriMo. And I told myself that I was either going to finish a book or I was going to shut up about writing one. So I did. I finished the book. It was utter crap. So then I started another one, which is okay. I tell people that sometimes you write a book and don't do anything with it. It's just a learning book. And that's what it was for me. So I wrote an urban fantasy called Chosen. And back then in 2010, indie publishing really wasn't a thing. It was considered vanity publishing. So I tried to get an agent and then gave up after a year and started indie publishing and have absolutely no regrets. So I write a lot of different genres to my detriment. I should have had pen names in there, but I used to be known for urban fantasy, but now I'm more known for mystery romance and rom-coms. So yeah. And so I've indie published in July 2011. And everybody asks me how many books I have. I have no idea. I need to count them. I would say at least 80 probably. So, but then you've got novellas and box sets and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I am always floored with the amount of books that sometimes you guys end up with after a couple of years. And at the same time, people are like, oh, I've only written 5. I'm like, dude, that's 5 more than most other people.
Yes.
So
yes,
you're
exactly.
good. Yeah.
Exactly.
With you writing in different genres, do you see that you kind of, or think that you kind of have to get into a different mindset? And what does that look like when you're writing things versus, like a thriller or a cozy mystery kind of thing versus some of the other stuff that you write?
Yeah. So like when I was writing urban fantasy, I used to love writing my Rose Gardner series because it was like a lighter mystery. And so I used to call her my dessert. So I find that I need to write both like darker stuff and lighter stuff. And so I need to like alternate them sometimes just for my psyche. I'm a Gemini. And so
it makes so much sense.
It up. Yeah. But then it's weird because then my Rose Gardner series really took off. And so obviously, as an indie author, I'm also a business person, not just an author. So I'm going to follow what the readers want. But I get to where I just need something different. So, I've written a women's fiction. I've wrote paranormal romance. And again, I should have done those under pen names. I even wrote some reverse harems, but I did write those under pen names that I know it's a secret. I won't tell anyone what they were, because there was at that point, there was a freedom to writing those because I feel like my readers have certain expectations of me, which is great. And I always try to meet those expectations. So no matter what genre that I write, I tend to write, I tend to write a lot of secondary characters, strong secondary characters and what have you. And so, but when I wrote those reverse harems and I told myself right from the beginning, no one would ever know I wrote them. There was such a freedom to write whatever I wanted and not have to worry about failing my readers. So I have a fantasy romance kicking around in my head right now. And I'm like, girl, you do not need another genre. It just muddies the water. And, my really diehard fans will follow me, but most won't. So if I do, I'll probably write it under a pen name and then tell readers what that pen name is. But
okay.
So if I'm writing a very different genre, I read books in that genre to make sure I'm trying to hit the tropes or the expectations of readers or what have you. But I've been told in reviews and by readers and stuff that I I tend to flow well between genres, that some people are surprised that I can write, a darker urban fantasy and then a lighter rom-com or whatever. And I'm not sure why. It's just, like I said, I guess I just try to like follow what I think readers expect in those genres. And but I feel like my writing, like the core of me is still there.
Okay.
I can't seem to get away from that. Like if I try to write a really dark thing, it just ends up still having some humor and stuff in it. I just can't seem to help it. So,
Well, I think that's just basic human nature. I mean, there's individuals that how we cope sometimes. I'll make a joke in the middle of a ER having to make a difficult decision.
Yes. Yeah.
Things like that. It's just how we handle things. But it is true as a reader, when I find an author that I just love their writing style, I don't care if they're writing thrillers, mystery, romance, any of the subgenres, fantasy, paranormal, I will follow because it's the writing style. And I know sometimes that works with some listeners and readers. Other times they're like, no, just give me the mystery and that's it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I want more. So if I love your writing style, I'm like, what are you doing next? But it's definitely,
and as an author, I love readers like that who will follow me. So
yeah. But also too, it's almost like a challenge. I'm like, for me personally, like I'm not a huge dark romance reader. And so if they were busting out with you're writing now a dark romance, I'm gonna be like, okay, let's see how it's gonna work because I love her writing.
Right.
How is she gonna how so much of how she gonna pull this off, but how is it gonna come out that I end up still loving it, the story itself versus not the genre, right? And that's where I think
and that makes
talent.
total sense.
And that's where the talent too also kind of shines, in that you can write whatever and it just flows better, based on what you write. And also sometimes you guys, there's been instances where there's been books that I've read. I have one example, like Danica Dark has her 7-year series and it reads like a contemporary. Just happens to have shifters in it.
I haven't read that series, but I'm going to definitely check that out now.
Or other that, it's still technically a romance. It just happens to be a murder.
Right.
Or
exactly.
Murder thriller. There just happens to be a little bit of romance and it's almost a romantic suspense, but not really. But still, it's one of those you kind of try to classify. And I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy the story and start overthinking it. Thanks.
Well, it's funny because like when I wrote my first rom-com, The Substitute, had been writing a lot of Rose Gardner mysteries. And so I start writing this rom-com and I throw mystery in there. Like I'm like, what are you doing, girl? I just couldn't get away from it. It was a very small minor mystery, but it was still in there. So yeah.
Yeah. But it's true though. I mean, think about it. At the end of the day, if you're writing a rom-com and hypothetically teacher, the mystery can be as simple as who ate the lunch from the refrigerator, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And figuring that out, that's an entire plot point right there where there's so many different things that could happen, but still that's still a mystery. And sometimes readers don't realize that it's part of the plot. It drives the conversation. It could be why two people get together, but it's still a mystery that they're throwing in there. And exactly. And they never thought that now that was the whole, like, they still wanted to know who the hell took the lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're that reader, you may want to check out mysteries and thrillers. That's
you might be pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you were saying that you had done that. Has it ever happened where you knew you were going to write, like you have to be writing, this is supposed to be a romantic comedy, but it ends up just being a murder mystery or something else like that, or the other way around where it was supposed to be this, but now it's a romantic comedy or a romance contemporary?
Yes. So my Maddie Baker series was supposed to start off being like super lighthearted, kind of like a cozy mystery, but not quite, because it still had cursing in it and, blood and stuff. Like technically cozies aren't supposed to have all of that. But it was supposed to be like funny, like my Darling Investigation series. And once I started writing it, it did not turn out like that at all. Like I ended up having to change the title. I changed the cover. It just turned out to be a a murder mystery that has some humor in it and has some romance, but it was darker than I expected it to be. And I fought it for a while, and then I finally was just like, girl, just go with it, because knew I was going to have to change everything, and I was like, this is the story that's supposed to be, and just go with it. Because I find if I fight it just doesn't turn out. It's not, in my mind, it's not as good as it would have been if I just let the story tell itself.
Yeah. Don't go against the wind, right?
Yeah, I'm a pantser too. Like, I do like have plot points, but I tend to do best when I pants and not have a very detailed plot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can kind of see something. I mean, I'm a planner, so that to me sometimes a little bit like, oh my God, really? How?
Yeah.
Yeah. But also the freedom of, oh, look, we're gonna go hard rights. Okay.
I know.
Versus,
yeah, and it's scary. It's
yeah.
scary when you think you're supposed to do one thing and it goes another way.
But see, that's where the pantser is like, okay, sure, let's just go that way. Me as the planner will bust out with no.
That's not happening. Yeah.
No. Let's go this way, please. Thank you. And then that's where the forcing happens and things cannot work out. And I know that
Yes.
from what you guys have usually shared with us is that the characters can be rather loud and sometimes can come in, literally have full on blown conversations if they're real people. And when that does happen and you're trying to force it, I'm sure the characters are going, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. And that the second book I completed, the urban fantasy that I published that I wrote after my NaNoWriMo book, that happened at the end of the book. The male character, Will, he was supposed to do some, like I plotted that one out some, and he was supposed to behave in a certain way. And as he's leaving, it's like the end, he starts like observing things around him, and I'm like literally going, what are you doing, Will? That's not the plan. We're not doing this. So I finally just let him do what he wanted, which sounds insane. But it turned out so much better than what I had planned. So yeah. Sometimes you just got to listen to those characters.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I know that they've gotten loud, like orders of books have been changed because of the characters being loud, and then also redone again because they were loud while you were not writing their story. But as soon as you started, they were like, mum's the word. And you're going, fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
So your characters have done that to you as far as, being loud and obnoxious or very vocal about things.
Yeah. And like, I feel like, especially if you're a pantser, at least for me, and like if I like, sometimes I'll have like multiple plot. So like if a book is A to Z, I'll have like A, and I'll have plot D, and I'll have point F or M, and then I have to just get to those points. But I've actually had some books where I literally had no idea what was going to happen until I started writing it. And so it feels like a choose your own adventure. So like the characters are doing their thing, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't feel right. Like they're not talking or they're not behaving at all. And so I have to maybe take a day and back up and say, okay, where is this going wrong? Is this just my headspace? What's going on? So then I'll usually organize my pantry or clean. Usually then it comes to me and I can figure out, okay, this is the direction I need to go, or I need to back up a couple of chapters and rewrite them and go a different direction. So sometimes that's a little scary, and I have dumped massive amounts of words before when it actually went the wrong way, because the theory, you hear, just keep writing in the first draft, just keep writing. You can sort it out in editing. And I have done that before and had to cut off entire halves of books and just trash the words. Yeah. So I don't follow that advice. Everybody has their own way that works for them. And I've come to realize if I'm stuck, oftentimes I need to take a couple of days and I need to think about it and let it sort itself out in my head while I'm doing that busy work. Because I took Becca Syme's Write Better Faster and learned my personality type, and then had some coaching sessions with her. And she's like, you're the kind of person that you need, when you get stuck, you need to organize. You're not wasting time organizing your pantry and cleaning. That's your brain's working in the background and it's sorting it out, and you're focusing on something else. And so I've just kind of learned to start trusting myself and trusting my process and my brain, and it's actually worked out better. So I'm not dumping massive amounts of words usually, and sometimes it might take me a little bit longer to write the book because I'm doing it that way. But yeah, it's just, but literally every book I write is different. And I think it's like that for every author. You think you've got it down pat, and then the next book will be like, ha ha ha, yeah, you think you have it down. No, you don't. Yeah, it's just laughing in your face. So yeah.
I can totally picture that character that was like all up in your face about, okay, so the next book's going to be about me. And you finally say, okay, fine, you agree to it. You sit down and you're going to start writing the book, and you start, and then there's that point where he needs to step up to say something and he's being quiet. And you go through that process. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to go clean the pantry and organize that thing out. And then he's like, what the hell are you doing, woman? Why are you not writing my story?
It's funny because my kids can always tell when I'm stuck in a book, because they'll notice the pantry's been all cleaned out, and they're like, oh, you're stuck again. Yes. Or the laundry room's been picked up and organized or whatever. So yeah.
Well, I will tell you, if we lived closer, I would definitely be one of your, like, listen, if you need my pantry.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would
get into that point where you may
Yes.
just want to come over if you're ever stuck. Don't have to worry about yours, redoing yours when yours is fine. There's other pantries that we can help you with.
There you go. Okay. I may put it out like on Facebook Marketplace. Do you need your pantry organized? I will come to it. Hey, there's a new side hobby business, right?
Gotta go with the hustles, right? And
that's
and also
right.
Productiveness. You're still doing what you need to do to get the story done, but while you're doing it, you're helping someone else. I mean,
I kind of like this plan. Yeah.
It's interesting you said that about the whole wasting time. A lot of us, I think, feel that however we have to get to that next step where in the process, whether it is organizing a spreadsheet or whether it is figuring out what comes next on a podcast, or for you, the story and things like that, we fight it. We're like, no, I must sit here at my desk and stare at a blank sheet of paper and stress out about not having anything to do with what I'm supposed to be doing. And to be able to just say, you know what, it can wait and focus on something else, I think is great that you've been able to discover that earlier on, or at all, because some of us are still struggling with that. What was that coach session again?
Becca Syme, she has this thing called Write Better Faster, and it would probably work for anything, but you learn your different personality types and your personality strengths and how to make them work for you and that kind of thing. So it was very insightful, and it was very helpful and made me feel better about the way my brain works. I was trying to fight it, and I was like, that's crazy, don't do that. So
but also giving yourself the permission, whether that is, and that's also a way of like the self-care, which a lot of times people think self-care has to be this huge grand thing, and then sometimes it's just being left alone to do anything, and it could be the bubble bath and could be this, but sometimes you just need to, that is a self-care.
And the curse of working from, like, I love working for myself, and I don't think I could ever work for anyone ever again, because I like the freedom of it. But the curse of it is the work is never done. So like last night, 9:00 at night, I have I'm watching TV, but my laptop is open, and I'm, making Facebook ads, or it's rarely that I'm not working. And so I've tried to find more of a balance over the last few years of, this is work time, this is family time. You can't work 24/7, So, but then I felt like I was having some health problems. So I felt like I went the other way too much, where I wasn't devoting enough time to work, but like I was having some brain fog. So that it was super frustrating when I was trying to write, because the words just wouldn't come. And so, but all of that got resolved, and I'm like, I feel like I'm back, but I'm like trying to like caution myself not to become that workaholic that I was, because I know I'm prone to workaholic tendencies too. And so like, it's not good to like work all the time either. But it's hard because my desk is here and there's always work to do. So, so that self-care is hard, because then you feel guilty because, well, you could be making a Facebook ad. You could be answering those emails that you put off. So,
and then feeling the guilt because you did take the time off and now you're playing catch up. I feel you. I'm still working on that. Again, also working from home. And finding that balance is really hard. And when you're on deadlines and you're trying to figure things out, and then you have the characters in your case yelling at you about their stories, and then you have fans, I'm sure, also asking about that secondary character that popped out of nowhere in one scene, and we're like, we want more of that one.
Yes, yeah. And I ended my Rose Gardner series, so I have a lot of readers who really, really, really want me to bring it back. So that's hard. But I always said I would keep writing that series as long as I felt like Rose had room to grow, and I was still invested in the series, and I'm still very invested in the characters. But I felt like I put those characters through hell for a lot of books, and I just felt like they needed at least their momentary happy ending for now. I've always said I may go back to them, but I'm actually bringing a few of them to a new series that I'm going to be releasing later this spring. So I'm hoping that will make some of them happy. So
we do love a good spinoff. So
yes, yeah.
Because that just helps with so much other potential, when there's a long series. Like for me personally, I love authors and their writing styles and things like that. And sometimes like when I discover someone new because of a book, and then I'm like, oh fuck, it's a part of a series and it's like 20 books. God dang it.
Yeah.
The commitments.
Well, yeah. Well, that's just it. It was I split it up into 2 series, but it was a lot of, there was 9 books in the first series and 7 in the second, some plus novellas, and a secondary series. So that's a lot of books to commit to, and it was very overwhelming. So I can totally see that. So yeah.
And then you guys keeping up that lovely Bible of characters, and if they have blue hair, or blue eyes, because potentially blue hair too, but
yeah.
Yeah. So
actually I had an older woman who had blue hair, but yeah. She tinted it, but anyway.
It happens. Yeah, I'm like, wait, what happened? They had green eyes in this one book, and now they have.
That's just it. So it gets really hard as an author, because you mentioned just in passing that this character had this car, but you don't remember you're writing their car, and you want to put what kind of car it is, and you're like, well, what book was that? I didn't put that down. I didn't write that down. And then you're scrolling, I'll spend, I could end up spending an hour looking for the model of the car that they drove, which is kind of dumb. I could have just put it was a car, but I'm just I really like the details. So yeah.
Right. But also that's also where you get dinged in a review.
Yes, definitely.
Because I'm the girl that I'm more about the story itself. If the description, while I'm in the moment, I'll remember. I'm like, oh, okay, love the fact that he has blue eyes or X white car. But later, after I finished with the book, I'm like, wait, he had what car again? But other readers are like, man, with the details, and they will remember, and that's something that they'll include in a review, which I understand. But I'm like, you could have just sent them a DM and let them know instead of doing it publicly. But it's, that's just again, me, that's just kind of like how I roll. I'm like, I'm not going to call you out on that, but plot missing maybe, but start with the good stuff, and then I would have preferred, but that's also where I love that we have such a diversity when it comes down to kind of readers that are in this community that will remember the details and remember every single little thing. And I'm going, how you human, you're supposed to be human.
I know, right? Yeah. I have on occasion asked my readers, but I hate to, because I feel like it makes me look really dumb. You don't know that?
Oh yeah, right.
I don't
the expectation
remember.
Is that you're supposed to know everything, and I'm like, do you not realize how many books they've written already in different genres? In your case, come on.
And over years, especially if someone discovers the series later, they'll have read them all back to back. But I first wrote Rose Gardner, the first book, back in 2010. And then wrote the last one a couple of years ago. So, that's a long spread between books, and for me to forget something. So
it's human nature. It's okay.
Yeah.
Where do you get the ideas for the stories, especially when there's so many different genres that you're writing in?
I kind of get them from everywhere. Sometimes I'll just start, I know I want to write a certain genre. And so I'll be like, okay, well, what can I write with that? Sometimes I'll just come up with an idea, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, what, back when I was writing whatever I wanted, I'd be like, oh, well, what genre is that? So Now, yeah, a lot of times I'll know that I I have this new mystery series coming out. I knew I wanted to write another mystery series. So I looked at like what my readers liked. Well, they liked it in a small town. They like a strong female protagonist. But I also wanted to change things, and I decided that she was I write amateur sleuth, but I also realized that there's limitations to that. Like you can only stumble upon so many murders. So I needed someone who was either in law, yeah, right. That is either in law enforcement or like a private investigator. So I made her, I kind of split the difference and made her former law enforcement, and she's going to become a private investigator. And I've actually like taken private investigator continuing education courses. Like if I was a private investigator, I could actually get credit for that, like continuing education credit. Because I kind of like over do that stuff. Like I over research because I want to make sure I'm getting it right. And so and I just don't feel like I probably know enough to write law enforcement. And in the Maddie Baker series, her love interest is a police detective in a small town. So I have wrote his police procedure, but I don't feel comfortable. I'm like always terrified that once the book releases that someone's going to call me out for doing something wrong. So I think I'll just feel more comfortable with her as the PI, so she could just do her own thing. So I knew that, and then I was like, okay, well, I could set it in Southern Arkansas, similar, like so fairly close to where Rose Gardner was set. And then I knew I was going to bring a couple of characters over that I really loved and didn't want to see the end of them. And I thought, well, I could totally weave them into her story, and then it just kind of grew from there. So
it's amazing where these stories can come up with, and I'm always like, I can kind of totally see it when if it's a rom-com or if it's one of those romantic contemporaries. I always feel a little bit like, where's your mind going when it's the thrillers and the mysteries and the whodunits?
I know, right? I know. And I'm like, wow, do people just think I'm like have a dark mind, right?
Yeah.
So I've actually
pissed her off.
I know, right? So I've actually started when I see interesting true crime things, like articles from newspapers, I've started bookmarking them and putting them in a file so I can look, and I don't have to totally dream up crimes. I can see crimes that have happened and maybe alter them to fit whatever I'm writing. So yeah.
What kind of scene do you like to write? Usually we always hear about the dreaded, potentially, but the dreaded sex scene that authors are like, oh, I'll just do the sex scene, insert here, and then they continue to move. But what's your favorite type of scene to write?
I really like when so I am the same way with sex scenes. I'm usually it's because I find sex scenes a challenge because it's a lot of choreography of which part is where, you don't want them having three hands, but you also want to have that emotional connection. So trying to weave that all together and make it, sexy. So readers are like, yeah, but I really like to write conversations between characters when they're just emotionally connected, or if they're bearing their souls. I find those really fulfilling to write. And yeah, I like those.
It's always interesting when you guys are on, sometimes hearing it on social or in other conversations and things. And I always kind of laugh about that whole dreaded sex scene and insert sex scene here, where others have been insert smart banter there, and then they're all over the sex scenes, right?
Yeah. See, I'd rather write the smart banter than the sex scenes.
Yeah. But I understand sometimes as you're reading, you're going, wait, what position is this? And you can imagine the reader busting out with trying to, I'm like, no, there's an extra hand there. Oh.
Yeah. I've heard of authors who have actual Barbie dolls to work it out. Those are usually erotica authors that I've heard say that. But yeah, I'm always trying to be careful of or it's kind of I feel fight scenes and sex scenes are very similar it's all a bunch of choreography. When I was writing urban fantasy, I've actually had my children act out a fight scene to see if this was actually going to work, and they loved it. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's definitely a great way to help mommy with her projects, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, we tend to details. Some stuff can stick out more than others, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And that one thing that you're just writing because you're in the moment of it, you're going, oh, there was an extra hand, or in some cases they forgot to put the condom on. Okay, gotta go back and add that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Hmm. What made you decide to have your books in audio?
I decided very early, actually. I think it was back in 2012, 2013. I heard about ACX, which is where authors can, find narrators and have auditions and stuff. But I will also be honest that I did not know what I was doing. And so I hired some, I didn't know what to look for narrators. So like I picked one for one series that was a royalty share and like regretted that later because she was not a great narrator. So I would have re-recorded them, but I was stuck for 7 years. I tried to buy her out and she wouldn't. It was a very popular series, so she was making money and she didn't want to be bought out, which I understand, but I was like stuck with the bad narration for several books until I could have them redone. But then I realized narrators are important, so that narrators have followings. And I had written the Curse Keeper series for 47 North, and they hired a narrator, Shannon McManus, to read that series. And I just really loved her. So I reached out to her and asked her if she'd be interested in narrating some books for me. And so we've worked together on a lot of books now. I just email her and say, hey, Shannon, I have a book that's going to be needing to be narrated, and she fits it into her schedule. So she narrates almost all of just my like single character female books. But I was like with Maddie Baker, I have the Noah's POV in there as well. So I needed a male, but I had with my rom-coms, they're dual POV. So Angela and I had hired a production company for those. And so they helped find narrators for both POVs. But I also knew, but with Maddie Baker, I knew of Chris Brinkley, who's a male narrator. He's narrated for Penny Reed, and I really liked his voice. And so I reached out to him and asked him if he'd be interested in narrating for me. And so he was very excited because I think he does a lot of romance, so it was mystery, and so I think it was a little bit different than what he usually does. So and he's done an excellent job. So yeah, I just knew that audio was important, even though I spend a lot of money on it and it takes me a while to earn out. But I'm an avid audiobook listener. I spend a lot of time in the car, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So it was just really important to me that my books be in audio if possible.
Yeah, it's amazing about some of the things you can get done when you're listening versus having to eyeball read, and it does count for those that may be busting out with it doesn't count. Yes, it does.
Yeah, it totally counts. That's I know. I see those arguments. I'm like, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, it does count, but it is true what you said. And that's also where I how this kind of podcast kind of started initially was to bring out that information as far as the importance of the narrators and how casting is huge. And just because they have a following doesn't mean that they're right for the part either. And all that, what's good for the character and what brings that character to life in our earbuds is so important, because it can make or break it. I mean, I've read books that have been fantastic, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to it again because the other book's coming on. I want to re-listen. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because the narrator, whether it wasn't the best choice or there's been other issues with the narrator, as far as behavior or other things, and you're going, no.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been fortunate, like I have sold audio rights for a while because I just didn't have time. But I've been lucky that they've usually given me choices of narrators. They'll be like, here are 3 narrators and auditions and what are samples or whatever, and pick from one of these. And I've usually been happy with who they chose. So
yeah, it's like with any skill sets, it gets better with time and practice, and that's including of figuring out how to do the audiobooks to benefit you as the business. And have it be where your listeners and readers are also happy. Because that's too, sometimes you're going, oh, I should have hired someone differently, or they didn't. And then the readers, the listeners are like, oh my God, this is the best ever.
Yeah.
And you're going, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. I appreciate you, but okay.
Yeah.
Or they've done a really good job. They're like, this is not who I imagined what they sound like in my head. I'm like, if they did, it'd be kind of scary if they got the exact voice. So it's always the best. You kind of have to take it there with a grain of salt. And I love the community. I really do. But it's like when they get so adamant, like, this is not how they sounded in my head. And I'm like, well, my head sounded different than your head did, and it's fine. Yeah,
exactly. I know. And it's kind of like, with narration, but also like with images, like someone will say, oh, this is this character. And somebody else be like, oh my gosh, that is not that character at all. And then, they almost get, depending on how beloved that character is, people can get into semi arguments over, and I'm like, like they just, whoever they are in your head is who they are. That is fine.
Yes, like it's okay. My favorite is when it starts off that way, and then they start with but he's my book boyfriend, and I know exactly what he looks like. I'm like, okay, cleaning has begun.
Yeah. I know, right? Yeah. And I'm not really big into descriptions of characters. Like I'll talk about their hair and their eye color and their height and stuff, but like I'm never gonna write he had a Roman nose and a pointed chin and high cheekbones. I mean, occasionally I may write something like that, especially if it's like a murder mystery suspects, like, or whatever. But like I do kind of purposely vague so people can fill in those blanks themselves.
Yes,
so,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I learned that years ago about the whole like headless, they call it headless torsos, and on book covers for that exact same reason.
Yes,
as well as others that they had. Damn, the body was great, but unfortunately not so much on the face from a photogenic perspective. But it does allow the person to really figure out in their own head what that person looks like, and in the one common denominator, abs. So, or a tattoo, things like that. Because, I mean, it happens too when you do the opposite. You're saying the character has blonde hair, and then the cover model on the cover has brunette, and you're going, or something completely different. You're going, that kind of takes me out a little bit. But again, it's like maybe when the author was writing it, that's the color, and now this is what they're dyeing it at. Okay, fine. I justify it.
I usually try to make sure the hair color matches, and a lot of times cover designers are good enough that they can change the color. Like they can have a model with one hair color and can change the hair color in the image. But like I can see like it, if you make a cover way ahead of time, which I haven't done, and then the character ends up having a different hair color, how it could happen. So but I guess I don't really like. I look at the cover and, I do buy books based on cover, but once I start reading, like I'm reading on my Kindle, so I don't see that cover. So I don't know. I don't remember what color hair they had. So
that is true. And I'm that girl that probably will forget about the detail.
The character exactly.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Chris, who's also going to be at Readers Take Denver. And you're
awesome.
Be going.
I did not know that.
You did not know that? Yeah, he's going to be there.
I'm going to have to find him. Yes, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I know this is not your first convention with the amount of time that you've been writing, but it is one of the bigger ones that's happening after the pandemic.
Yes.
So, so there's a lot of things going on. What are you most excited about?
Seeing other authors. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I love meeting my readers, but it's a chance to like meet authors face to face who I've maybe had online conversations with, or maybe even a Zoom call, but to like actually get to see them in person. So I find that to be a really exciting part of going to a bigger conference. Yeah,
that's definitely something that is common with the authors, because it is a lonely job. I mean, you have the characters in the head, but they're not real.
Yeah.
Shh, let's not say that too loud. Because then they'll start talking to you guys. And social media has been great to be able to kind of bring communities together and things like that. But there's still something about connecting with that one person or two that you've been talking to online, or that you've loved their work, and you're like, oh my God, you're real. And you're here.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it's gonna be a fun time over there at Denver. It's lots of authors and narrators that are going. Like I said, Chris is going to be there, so that's going to be fun for you to be able to meet your narrator.
Yes, I'm going to get to meet him. That is so exciting. I'm gonna have to look and see who else is there, because we've with our rom-coms, we tried to hire different narrators with each book so that they didn't, especially within a series, so they didn't sound the same. And so we've got several narrators that we've used. So I'm definitely going to have to look and see who's going. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's adds a little bit of different depths and stuff. And also it's funny too when we think about like how they sound in our earbuds, and then we meet them in real life, or we're talking to them like just on the podcast, and I'm like, you're putting on the other voice, weren't you?
I'm sure, because it's voice acting. So I'm sure they have different voices for that.
Yeah, it's one of those two. I've had people say, hey, I heard them on your podcast and I like their voice a lot more than they did what I've heard in the samples. And I'm like, just tell them that you want their normal talking voice then. And then
Yeah.
that's just good feedback for them to start versus them having to do it and put it on of sorts. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun time.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I watch a lot of Netflix. I'm not gonna lie. I watch a lot of series and stuff, but I will say, we were talking about ideas. I get ideas from that too. And like the writing, like I watched a series on Apple called Bad Sisters. And it was really great because it mixed timelines. And I just loved how the writers like mixed those so perfectly and told a story and just kept you on your toes until the very end. Like I use those, like I say, like when I first wrote my very first urban fantasy, I learned a lot. I was an avid Lost fan, so I learned a lot about the answer a question, present another. And so like I learned a lot about like keeping that tension going from Lost. And so I learn a lot from like the TV shows and the writing of TV shows and how they're laid out. So yeah, at least that's what I tell myself to justify watching so much of it. I obviously read too, but
I was gonna say product knowledge, research.
Yeah, exactly. And sadly, a lot of times if I'm reading, it is what I would call research, like reading the genres. What's the current trends for the genre or whatever. So yeah, but I do read for fun too. And I usually tend to binge like a genre. Like I'll read a lot of paranormal romance, or I'll read a lot of thrillers, or I'm very eclectic in my reading. I read a lot of stuff, so a lot of different genres. So yeah, my Kindle doesn't know what to suggest to me. It's super confused. What is she doing now? Yeah. So
yeah, I would say that my Spotify, as far as list for songs, is very much like that. As far as like, I don't know what to recommend between the Viking, Celtic, Enya, hip hop, rock, 80s, 90s, and stuff like that. But my reading it's similar. I think they will definitely have paranormal first to some extent, and then some rom-coms and things like that, and also some really good historical ones that I like, especially when it's narration. For me, it's the whole accent thing. I'm a sucker for accents, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, me too. I love me some accents. Yeah.
When it's done right, you're going, oh, can you just read this? I don't care what it is, just keep talking.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. One of the things I love doing with my guests is play a game of 2 truths and a lie. It's fascinating how you guys can figure and come up with some of these things, and the why you end up selecting them is also fantastic. It's a psychologist's wet dream. And it goes back to me also wanting to be a psychologist when I was younger.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so I'm kind of living vicariously there too. But why don't you share with us your 3 things, and we will try to figure out which one's the lie.
Okay. Well, my first one is that I graduated from high school early and went to college during my senior year of what should have been my senior year of high school. So I had enough credits. I hated high school. And so I decided I was going to start my college career early. My second one is I live in Kansas City. So like everything's like Chiefs, right? Since we won the Super Bowl. And I was down at the plaza last week. It's like a big outdoor shopping area because my computer died and I had to take it in to get it fixed. And I saw Patrick Mahomes down at the plaza, and yeah, that was exciting. So, and then my third one is I was in a pilot for a Kansas City talk show, and I was a makeover segment of that show.
Goodness gracious. See, it's you have done the whole, I'm going to give her so many damn details that it could potentially be true in all cases. How you
That's the writer in me, right?
Yes.
The details, right?
It's in the details. Yeah. I mean, even though the whole and I hated high school. I'm like, okay, so that has to be true because if she said she hated high school, I mean, it was so believable. And then this whole thing about why you were in the downtown plaza and the why. And then, oh yeah, I just happened to also meet Patrick. And then of course the makeover. So I want to say, in a pilot for the makeover session is the lie.
That is actually true.
Oh, see.
That is true. That was actually like really super like enlightening to me how those kinds of shows work. Like they showed up at my door and I had to do that 3 times. Like it was supposed to be a
surprising at the door.
Yeah. So I had to like film that 3 times, like them showing up at my door and me acting surprised. And like through the whole makeover part of the day, I didn't really even get to enjoy any of it. It was all just filming it. And so, yeah, that was like a whole eye opener. And I actually used some of that when I was writing my Darling Investigation series, which was a reality TV show. So, yeah. So that was true.
That was true. See, and I'm like, okay, she did not give a whole lot of details. So that, see, that's how you get us. Okay, so now we have the 2 other options. Shit. Dang it, girl. The Patrick Mullen in the plaza is a lie.
That is a lie.
Okay.
I was down at the plaza with my computer because it broke. It like broke. The screen cracked and I had to get it replaced. But I did not see Patrick Mahomes.
See, it's all those little details. All the details,
right?
Yeah. It's all that. It's like, it was too much. Okay, well, see. All right. So you did graduate early because you hated high school.
Yeah, I did. I hated high school. So yeah. I had enough credits, so I'm like, hey, I'm out of here. So
yeah, no, I wish I would have been able to have done that. I had enough credits, but except for that one English class, and they're like, no, I'm like, I can take it in the summer. I'm like, and they're like, no, it's okay. So I had a bunch of electives my senior year, and kind of had to.
So frustrating. It feels like such a waste of time, right?
It is, because also it becomes that moment where like, so I don't, what was it? Like AP American history or something like that. I was like, I don't need to buy. So I was like taking extra, long lunches and stuff like that, and other courses. I was like, no, physics, I don't need this. And still graduate with a 4.0, and I'm like, that kind of tells you, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, no. You work with words all day long. Yes. What's your favorite word? Different from a curse word.
Gosh.
Different from a curse word, because that's a separate part of this question.
I don't what is my favorite word? I have a lot of Rose Garner was fun because she was set in the South, so I could write a lot of different words, like shenanigans, which is even like in the title. So I would say shenanigans is one of my favorite words. So yeah, it's just a fun word to say, and it insinuates a lot of mischief, and
yeah, and it can go so many different ways. Like, so much fun shenanigans.
I know, right?
Yeah. Or the opposite of like the amount of shenanigans going on around right now. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it is such a great word. I do love that one. So, what's your favorite curse word?
It is the F word, which is so funny because before I wrote Chosen, which was my urban fantasy with the character who like had the mind of his own, I never ever said that word, but he did. And so it was like so weird because he was an ex-Marine, he was a mercenary, of course he's gonna say it, right? And so it was like so hard for me to like write it all the time, and then I started saying it, and so anyway.
You're like actually so blushing right now about the fact that you had to say that word.
Yeah. Like it was like one of the things he would like think, and I would like write them down and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just typed that. Like, and like in hindsight, they were so tame. They were so tame. Some of the things that I wrote, it wasn't even like sexy, but like anyway, it's like I was obviously very sheltered. Now I'm like, now I just like say it, and I have to like check myself where I'm at or whatever. I try not to say it around my children, even though most of them are grown, just because it just doesn't feel right to say it with them, but it does come out. So
yeah, I mean, this entire time you have not said any curse words, and I'm like, fuck this shit, motherfucker.
Okay, I was like, I was thinking I should have asked you if we could curse, because I would have called Will an asshole earlier, but I was like, oh right.
Yeah, it is a plus, 18 plus kind of a thing. And I am the girl that can not only make anything into a sexual innuendo, because I am that friend, But I'm also the
Okay.
friend that can use fuck as an adjective, noun, pronoun, all that
Yes.
fun
Yeah, it's
stuff.
a great
So
word. You can use it
yeah,
in so many ways, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, I was not a cursor up until high school, and I met at the time my best friend, and she taught me all sorts of different creative words. But I totally understand about, the upbringing. It was just not in the household for me either. And it was one of
Yes.
those use other words. My mother can make you feel this tiny
Yeah.
without saying one, curse word in any of the languages that she knew. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
And that to me is also an art form, but also a good
Yes.
fuck, also just
Yeah.
hits the right spots,
Yes,
Yeah.
I can agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I did try the whole cursing down in front of my kid, but that got to be very, very, very stressful because you can
Yeah.
only do a bunch of like, instead of saying this is a bunch of bullshit and it was like a bunch of
Yeah.
baloney and getting
Yeah.
creative with like fudge stickles and peppermint schnapps. Yeah, it was just like, I'm out of words.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
out of
like,
words.
no,
I'm
this is
done.
ridiculous. I'm
Yes.
just gonna, yeah.
Especially when you
And
learn and you
they're hearing it.
discover, yes, and discovering that text where they were using it, I was like, oh my
Yes.
God. And I've been stressing out this entire goddamn fucking,
I know, right? Yes. Yeah, exactly.
and then that moment of pride, like, well, he was at least using it in the proper terms as far as
There you
referencing it.
go.
So
Right.
I'm good. As long as it's used properly and not just as a
Yeah.
filler, I'm okay with it. So
Yeah, exactly.
gotta love it. The creativeness of words. It means a lot. At the same
Yes.
time, it's just gotta be said, so.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, yeah, it's
Mhm.
just nothing else hits the spot.
Yeah, I hear it. So before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
I have a release next week. It's a rom-com. It's the last of my Highland Hill series with Angela Casella, and it's called Matchmaking a Roommate. So it's a rom-com, so it's a lot of fun. But I'm currently working on the first book of my mystery series, the one that's set in Arkansas with some crossover from reader or characters from Rose Gardner, and it's called Little Girl Vanished. And it's a little darker. Like I said, I like to write light and dark, so it's a little darker because it's a story about a little girl who's been kidnapped. But I'm loving bringing in the characters that I know, so that's fun, because sometimes with a new series it's a little daunting when they're all new characters.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that I actually know some of them, and I don't have to get to know them, because sometimes with a new series you're getting to know the characters as you write them. So yeah, but that doesn't have a release date. It's I'm not going to release it until I finish. I'm not going to put up a pre-order until I have finished it and I sent it to my narrator and know when I'm going to have it back, because I want to have a simultaneous audiobook release with the series. So yeah, I'm going to start trying to do that, because I have a lot of audio listeners who are like, when is the audio coming out? And I get tired of saying in a couple of months, and they get tired of waiting a couple of months because they want to read the book, but they're listeners, so they have to wait. So yeah, I'm going to try really hard to start having simultaneous audio release. So yeah,
that's definitely a feat, especially nowadays, how sometimes Audible can be as far as printing or releasing some of those things. But I love the fact that you're thinking about the listeners, and we appreciate it and we understand.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think definitely when you guys strive to have simultaneous releases and shit happens, we're like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't feel very nice, when sometimes it feels like, and it's not meant as the intent, but when it's like, oh, we weren't thinking about you, so we're not going to do it until like later. And again, not what the thought process is for you guys, because there are so many different factors that come into play when it comes down to audiobooks, from not only the cost, but the availability of a narrator. And at the time that it takes to edit things and all that fun behind the scenes stuff that y'all don't know about.
Yeah. And like with, I use Shannon McManus for a lot of my series. So she's a very busy woman. And so she has a lot of traditional contracts as well. So like sometimes it's a matter of when she can fit me into her schedule.
Yes.
So, so I actually took that into consideration with this new series. Like, should I like try to find someone who might be more available? But I just really like my working relationship with her, and I really like her as a narrator. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick with what I know. And
so it works. And if everybody's happy on your ends, great. And it's I would much rather, like I always say when people are like, oh, we have to push a release date out, or oh, we have to wait because the narrator has the availability. I'm like, I much rather wait to get that book that's completely awesome because you really worked on it and you had the time and the capacity to do it. Same thing with
Yeah.
finding the right voice that is going to be for the character, than getting a book that's meh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that meh, not gonna do good.
Well, and I put up pre-orders and canceled canceled pre-orders because I didn't think the book was going to be good enough, because I never want to put out a subpar book. So I've always said I'll cancel a book, I'll move a pre-order before I'll put out a book that I wasn't proud of. So
yeah, that's good. And I know that the readers and the listeners as well will always be appreciative of that. I mean, we might be like, dang it.
Yeah.
Fine, Denise.
And I understand.
Fine.
Yeah.
They'll love you. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then just go reread something else or find someone else to listen to until your book is ready. And that's okay.
There you go.
Totally
right?
as it should be. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me. It's been so much fun. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. I've had a lot of fun.
Good. And I can't wait to see you in person at Readers Day Denver. So that's going to be so much fun. Yes,
I'm very excited. I haven't been to a conference in over 3 years. So I'm so excited.
Yeah. Post-pandemic.
Yep, post-pandemic.
I've had to learn how to people.
Back in the world.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right.
So perfect. Well, I will be including all your social media information as far as the links and some of this upcoming release stuff in the main landing page over at Viviana Enchantress of Books. Everyone, thanks for listening. And until next time, happy listenings. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Nixley Zenner, Carol Liebner, Brittany Robinette Leiter, Michelle Bastard,
Brandy Schmidt, April Branson.
The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.